Hi.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. All right. So I want to start from the very beginning and ask how you guys got started.
Me and the original guitar player started the band in, I want to say it was 2007 on Vancouver Island. And we kind of were just originally doing it as a studio project. It was just the two of us. We recorded everything ourselves. We recorded it in a barn in Coombs. And then I moved to Vancouver, and Zach and I had been living in the States prior to that recording. And when I moved back here, we kind of tried to start it as a real band. And it was Zach and I and Nathan Salaji and his sister Heather and Steve, who was the original guitar player, started the band with me. And that was the lineup for a while. And we played like that for a bit. And then Heather, she was the drummer at the time, she left. And we got a different drummer, Steve, who stayed with us for a while. And yeah, there's been kind of consistent lineup changes ever since, but that's how everything started.
Awesome. I was gonna ask how everybody met, but I feel like you summed that up as well.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the demos were first recorded in like 2004, and then we first kind of got the band as like a full band in like 2006.
You're right, because the
Yeah.
first 7-inch came out in 2009, so it was way before.
No, the
that.
first 7-inch is 2006 and then 2007.
Is it? Yeah. I'm terrible with dates about things like
I was just
that.
gonna say it's
won't
good
have
you're
reference
both
dates.
here. You guys can cross-reference each other. All right, so let's fast forward to today because you guys have a new album coming out called Hindsight. It's coming out November 5th, and I want to ask what the album is about.
So it's not really all new material. It's mostly a re-release of singles. So it's kind of like a retrospective more in that regard. So there'll be things on there with the lineup that I mentioned earlier, like the initial lineup. Some of the first songs, I think Cold War was the first song that we ever really professionally recorded. And that was just me and Steve, the original kind of founding member, playing everything. And Heather, our drummer, later on doing some backup vocals here and there. So it's not really like a cohesive album in like a conceptual sense. It's more a singles collection. They kind of range from that beginning era to the last two songs that we just recently recorded, which would be our most recent singles. So
There's alternate takes of some other material that we recorded in Los Angeles, literally right before the pandemic. Actually, we were on tour and we did a session with Part-Time Punks in LA, and with the idea that like if we ever did a singles compilation, we probably want to include some like different alternate versions, especially with the new lineup. So yeah, Hindsight is like our retrospective. We've been on a few different labels throughout our career as a band, so many of the original or the early material just kind of had a single pressing of 500 or 1,000 copies and has been out of print for more than a decade at this point. So it's kind of a collection of all of that stuff kind of just have in one place.
So how did you decide like now is the time to release all of that?
I mean, part of it was just, it felt like we'd taken some time off due to COVID. We've changed our sound so much over the years. We thought it would be kind of interesting to have that retrospective because those first songs sound like they honestly sound like a different band. And I think you kind of hear that listening to them all chronologically. There's massive differences. And a big part of that is like our evolving tastes. But another aspect of it for sure is like the other band members. Mm-hmm. There's been different members that have changed the sound and brought things every time, and it's interesting to listen back to that and kind of see where it's taken us.
Yeah, I think we released Nostalgia right before the pandemic hit, and we got to do one tour on that, and then things kind of took a nosedive, and we've been sitting on it. We've been working on a lot of new material, but we thought we don't like to rush when it comes to working on new projects, and we thought we could release Hindsight. Now's a good time. All that material is so long out of print that it felt like a good time to sort of put it out and get it out there with some new material and some unreleased stuff, and then continue to work on the next record.
Awesome. Yeah, I know you mentioned the songs from LA, and I think those are a live version, correct?
We recorded them kind of semi-live off the floor with Part-Time Punks. They've done a lot of different sessions for post-punk bands from kind of all over the world. Yeah, it was a fantastic experience, and it was fun. We recorded them all in a day off the floor, did some overdubs here and there, but it was interesting to do that. I think the whole kind of intention was kind of to do something maybe almost like a modern equivalent of John Peel sessions, like happened in the 80s, and we tried to change up the songs a bit. So hopefully people like those versions of them.
Yeah, I mean, as a collector, the Peel sessions tend to be some of my favorite versions of songs from all the, from bands that I love. So I always thought it would be really cool to do something like that. And but we were excited about the opportunity. And being on tour, it's nice to do something different as well. Like, you play a show every night, you get in the van, you drive, and that's super fun. But it's also kind of cool to just have a day where you do something different and work in the studio. And so yeah, we had a good time with it.
Awesome. So speaking of live, I saw that you guys were actually able to play a live show this year. So I want to ask about that experience. Tell me how you were able to actually pull it off.
Well, I mean, having connections to a DIY venue means being able to circumvent some of the more strict rules around, venue capacity and some of the things that are going on with COVID right now. I think they did a pretty good job of making sure that everyone was masked and it felt pretty safe. But it felt good to be up there playing music again after all this time. We took a pretty big hiatus last winter, which I don't think it wasn't like a momentum killer because we all worked on riffs and we had, writing music and stuff, but it sucks to not be meeting up and rehearsing together and working on music. So it felt good it felt good to sort of be back consistently rehearsing again, and to perform live was cool, and we're hoping to do some more here in the winter. I guess we'll see what happens.
I was really hesitant about the whole thing, and I was really concerned about it, but I feel like it went as well and as safely as it could have. I was very concerned, but everyone wore masks, and I was surprised how respectful like everyone in the audience was. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Awesome. And what was the capacity like? Like how many people were you allowed to have? I can't remember when restrictions started happening. Yeah.
It felt pretty packed, but yeah, I'm not sure how many. There was quite a few people there. Yeah.
Awesome. So speaking of DIY, I've read that you guys sort of consider yourselves a DIY band, and I was just wondering why that's important to you.
I mean, I think we both kind of, and most of the band members at any given time kind of come from a very DIY kind of punk background, and we were all pretty involved in I don't know, peace punk or anarcho punk to some degree, and DIY culture, zines and just doing everything kind of yourself. And right before we started the band, Zach and I were really into dumpster diving and kind of living for no money for a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the world we come from, and that's our approach to doing music and doing things. I mean, and nobody's, at the end of the day, you can play the game, I guess, if you want to try and get on a label and do all the annoying things you got to do or whatever to try and be a part of that world. But our feeling, I think, really has always just been to make the music that we want to make and do it in the way that we want to do it. And we've been fortunate. I mean, we have had labels, great labels that we worked with, and we've been able to do big tours and achieve some pretty cool things. But our approach has always really just been that if we want to do it, we're going to do it and find a way to make it happen. And the DIY community is it's not perfect, but it's definitely a cool place to sort of start and do things. And we've had experiences that we wouldn't have had otherwise, I think, if we were just working with touring agents and playing big clubs and that kind of thing.
I think if it weren't for those connections in the DIY music scene and the punk scene specifically, we probably never would have gone to Europe. We probably never would have met half the people that we met. We probably never would have even released a record. Whispers in Darkness, the label that we did our first 7-inch on, all they really released in the past was Japanese hardcore bands and crust bands and peace punk bands, and they never really released anything that sounded like us before. Yeah. So we were really happy to have that opportunity, and kind of helped us all along the way, I think.
And you're able to pull off a show this year because of DIY. So there you go.
Yeah,
it works.
I guess so, yeah.
So it's kind of a random question, but it does tie in because your band name is Spectres, and Spectre kind of means ghost. So I figure I would ask you guys, have you ever seen a ghost? Do you believe in ghosts? Spooky season, so it all ties in.
Oh man.
We've had some pretty weird experiences actually. When we, like a few things really jump out of my mind. We were, when we first kind of started, we had a rehearsal space that it was this big kind of creepy warehouse in East Van.
Right off Clark and Hastings. Actually.
Yeah.
We won't give the exact
Yeah,
location.
totally. And we had this room, like it was a great, probably one of the probably the nicest room even to this day that we've ever had. Huge room. And I remember we were rehearsing one night, and all of a sudden there's this like flashing light in the room, like in the middle of the song, like right, like it's like a 20-foot high ceiling, and the room was like I don't know, like 50 feet deep, but right in the sort of center, like just floating in space, there was this like brilliant bright light, and we all stopped playing, like all of us stopped playing. What the fuck was that? And then so we went and talked to the woman who ran the place after, and she was like, "Oh yeah, this is totally haunted." And we're like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Oh yeah, it's like kind of some creepy stuff. You guys want to see?" I'm like, "Okay." So she takes us, and she gets like this big like library style like rolling like staircase thing, and she takes us up this upper kind of mezzanine thing you can't access otherwise. And so we're up on top of where all the rooms are, and it's totally dark up there. And she walks us back in this room that would have been like directly above our room where we rehearse. She opens this door, and it was like, I don't know. I mean, it looked like something out of a horror movie, like like
something out of Saw.
Yeah, like it was like torture porn. Like it was pornography, like all over the walls. Like somebody had papered the walls with it, and then there was a cage in the room.
Yeah,
like,
it was huge, like
human-sized cage
It was
in the
terrifying.
fucking room, and we were like, "What the fuck?" She's like, "Oh yeah, this place used to be owned by bikers, and I don't know what was going on here." We're like, "Yeah, okay, that's really fucked up." And then so that happened, and then
In Montreal, remember that?
well, but we have other ones too,
Yeah,
because in that same place, like we had it closed at midnight. You had to be out of there by midnight, and we had loaded out earlier that night after playing a gig and gone away, and then we were out of there probably by like 11:30. And the next day we were back in rehearsing, and the lady who ran it was like, "Hey, I saw one of you guys like after we were closed, like what were you doing? You guys, you're supposed to be out of here by midnight." We're like, "We were out of here by 11:30. It was like there was nobody behind. We all left together." And she's like, "I saw Steve back there walking behind by your room, like he was leaving your back door." And we're like, "Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't us. Like, no way." And she's like, "Well, there's nobody else in here because there was only one way to get in through the front door, and she sits by the front door, so she would have seen it." So she saw somebody come out of our room. And the craziest one, I think, though, is what you just said, which is we were in Montreal, and we had played a gig at this festival of arting from Montreal, and we had to fly out the next morning out of Albany, New York, which is quite a far drive. So we decided to leave right away after the show, and it was I mean, it was late. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. It was dark. And we could see, we're driving through this kind of rural area. We could see the border, the lights of the border kind of up in the distance. And we thought, okay, let's just pull over and make sure there's like no empty beer cans or nobody like has anything incriminating on themselves. And we could all get our passports out and be ready for when we cross the border to the States. And so we're pulled over on the side of the road, and you know, the dome lights on the inside of the van pop on because the back trunk is open because it was you were in the back, right? Yeah, that's right. Brian was in the back digging through his bag looking for his passport, and all of a sudden we hear this voice like and there's nothing around us, like it's farmers fields on both sides of the road, pitch black night, there's no houses, nothing at all, and all of a sudden we hear this voice, like it was a voice speaking French. It was a woman's voice, like maybe like sounded like a young kind of a girl.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, pitch black night in the middle of a farmer's field. And like this voice just like right in the middle of the car, like in between all of us. And all of us started looking around like, what was that? I thought it was someone in the ditch asking for help. Yeah. Brian said, "Did you hear that? Where did that sound like it was coming from?" And then Steve, our former drummer, was sitting in the front seat. He goes, "Somebody was coming inside my head." And then we all just get in the car and we just drive so fast. And the only place to go was straight to the border. And we get to the border, and these border guys are looking at us like what is wrong with you guys? We're all just, so scared. So yeah, we've had a bunch of weird experiences.
Yeah, I'm happy I asked. Those are some good stories. All right. So my last question is, what's next for you guys?
We're probably in the midst of recording a new record. We have a ton of demos. We probably have like 10 songs ready as demos. We're gonna try to get in with Jesse Gander again, who recorded the last 2 songs on the compilation that's coming out, and hopefully we'll have those out soon. And
yeah, we're working with
Tour
Swamp Booking in Europe, so hopefully going to do a European tour here pretty quickly, or not pretty quickly, but in the fall of 2022, and play some local shows. I mean, it's been hard. This has been a really difficult time to try and predict what is happening with the border, and can we go play shows even just, in Seattle and Portland and stuff. So I think we're kind of waiting to see what happens with the border and the pandemic and everything before we really book any major shows in the US or whatever. But we'd love to play some more shows in Canada, maybe play in Alberta and get out to Quebec and Ontario and stuff. So we'll see what happens. But right now we're just kind of in a creative mode and working on new material. And we all really enjoy that stuff. So that's where we're at.
Awesome. Well, thank you for chatting with me.
Yeah, thanks for
no
interviewing us.
problem.
All right, I will let you guys go. Enjoy
All right,
the
have a
rest
good
of your
night. Have a
night.
nice
Yeah.
night.
Bye.